So my name is Rohit Dhawan. I'm the product management director for our display ads business in EMEA. And I really enjoy the talks, both from Casper and Nigel. So what I'm going to talk about is, now that you've had a little bit of overview of what programmatic is and kind of how it currently operates, some of the challenges that the industry, and particularly like Google, is kind of working on. So the first one I find is incredibly interesting. So, I've been in the industry for close to 20 years, and going back to like 1998, 1999, we always thought that it was going to be the year of mobile, right? Like it was like all of a sudden everyone's going to be using a mobile phone, and then 2001 came, 2002, and it just never kind of happened. And then all of a sudden, some point last year or the year before, talk to any publisher, and all of a sudden their traffic is looking like this, where their desktop traffic is either flatlining or declining. And then you see their mobile traffic increasing dramatically. Now you mentioned it, so I was at Facebook during this time, and it was actually a code red for us where we didn't know what to do. We were only monetizing on desktop. All the product managers, all the designers, and this is also true with Google, had grew up kind of in a desktop world. So now how do you live kind of in a mobile world? And things typically move first from the publisher standpoint. So when publishers, all of a sudden their inventory is mobile, they often start to panic in terms of, okay, like how do I monetize this? How do I provide great ads to users? The technology providers often then are trying to figure out like how to catch up. And so I'll talk in a few minutes about one of the key challenges that we kind of face. But one of the most interesting aspects around kind of mobile is just how much time people spend in applications. And they say that 80% of someone's time on their mobile phone is in an app, right? Which is very different than a mobile web. And you could even look at examples. Someone was telling me the story the other day. In Japan, I don't know if this is true, but they say phones are waterproof in Japan because people use their phones so often that kids, and I think even adults, they want to use their phone in the shower, right? Just like completely crazy. So it's like just such a transformation. And people, depending on who's speaking, will be checking their phone every 2 to 5 minutes. So often 100, 200 times a day, right? And so what does that mean? Like I look at myself, I wake up in the morning and I love my wife dearly, but I have my phone on this side and my wife on this side. And sometimes I'll pick up my phone first, right? And just I'll see what's kind of going on in the emails, and I'll say good morning to her. And I'll often open up a mobile app, which I just showed you that the vast majority of people use in a very meaningful way. Then I might go to a mobile web thing in my, my browser. Then I'll go into work, right? And I use my laptop. Then I come home and use the tablet. And from a technology perspective, even though that's me, one person, Rohit, from a technology perspective, that's 5 different people. Even when I'm using the same phone, mobile web versus mobile app is 2 different identifiers. And there was some talk earlier just with respect to data, be able to reach users. One of the big advantages of programmatic is this whole concept of real-time bidding, where instead of you pre-booking inventory, saying, okay, for the next 2 years or the next 2 months, I'm going to book 1 billion impressions and just serve my ad, and I have some flexibility on the ad server side to determine what type of creative I show this particular user. But with programmatic, with real-time bidding, for every single person that goes to that publisher's website, you can decide if you want to bid on that user. And when that user, in my example, when I wake up in the morning, if I see, let's say, an ad from, I was recently in Morocco, let's say the Morocco government wants to advertise about how it's so great to visit Morocco, this summer. So on my mobile phone, I'm very unlikely to buy. Conversion rates on mobile are low, but awareness is high, right? So if I'm in a Facebook newsfeed, or if I'm a publisher website, show me an awareness ad, and then when I go to work and during the lunchtime, or maybe I'm just browsing the internet again, I might be more in the mindset of, okay, if I see that ad again, but it's a different creative targeted towards me to get me to buy an airplane ticket, these are the types of things that advertisers want to do, and we're not there yet. We're actually, in some ways we're very close, in some ways we're quite far. But I come from the mindset, and possibly because I've been before Facebook I was at Google as well, so I joined Google about 10 years ago. So I've been like um, I grew up kind of in search ads, per se. And my view of search advertising is that the ads are completely additive to the publisher experience. So when I use google.com, if I search for, be it flowers for my wife or a telephone calling card to call my parents who live in India, like the ads I get, the commercial ads I get, are often better than those queries. And this is like one of the key challenges we face in this industry in terms of how do we make the ad experience much better for users. And the key aspect of it is, which is what programmatic's enabling, is that you know information about the user and do it in a very, ideally very privacy kind of like centric way, that you can show them relevant ads in the experience that I just described. But a key part of that is being able to like map that this user in the morning is this, and in the afternoon is that same user. So I think that's one like big thing we're kind of working on. And again, it's going to kind of weave those pieces together. If you have the technology and you have the user data, you can create these beautiful advertising experiences. The other thing, I think Casper touched on it, just with respect to like publishers. So with programmatic, it's you would think, okay, it's like great, get as much like advertiser demand as possible into your inventory. So suppose you have this kind of pool of inventory and you're running an auction. You want as many people as possible to bid in it, right? But there's a lot of like publisher fear, and possibly for good reason, because if you're now allowing advertisers to cherry pick and say, okay, like in the past I might have had to book 1 billion impressions over the next 2 months. Now actually I kind of realized that I don't need all 1 billion impressions. I just need 1/10 of that, and I'm going to choose which 1/10 I take. Like it's scary from a publisher standpoint that if I enable this real-time bidding, that I'm allowing people to cherry pick and there'll be all this leftover inventory. Right? And some of the stuff that Casper and Nigel talked about, I don't think you guys touched on private marketplaces. It's much more around just open auction, and that's the way the stock market kind of works. Stocks for sale, like the seller of the stock, you get as many people as possible kind of like bid on it, and then the price is kind of set. But because of this kind of fear of like cherry picking that publishers often have, again for good reason, what Google and other companies have enabled, they've enabled this concept of like private marketplaces, and it's starting to get a decent amount of traction. And basically the way private auctions and private deals, which all fall under the umbrella of private marketplaces, work is that you're giving control to the publisher, and essentially I view it as like a tool for the sales team to go out, and I think the term you guys used was like set pieces, right? Set piece. So just in terms of sales team, a salesperson for the publishers going out to advertise and say, our inventory is really great, like you should be able to like buy it for these kind of particular reasons. But a buyer wants to use their own data and be able to buy on like a real-time basis. So what the publisher can do is say, okay, like I'm going to carve out this bunch of inventory where you can bid on a real-time basis, and so you can do your cherry picking, but you have to commit to buy a certain amount of it, right? So maybe I expose all 1 billion impressions to you, but you have to commit to buying like 200,000 of those impressions. So you can choose which 200,000 of those 1 billion impressions, and maybe we would agree on a price, but I'm giving you like first access to it. It's a big trend for the industry going forth, where we're enabling publishers to feel comfortable like selling their inventory in a way where they have control. And so by enabling, so the third thing I kind of want to touch on, just trying to make sense of the time. So again, so I talk about like mobile and like what mobile is doing in terms of inventory it's unlocking. And if I said earlier that the number of times someone checks their phone is insane in a day, and the number of people who have a phone is also insane. So when you look at frequency of checking your phone and the number of people who have it, which is reach, that's what brand dollars is all about, like reach and frequency. So mobile provides like a great challenge, but also enables like great opportunities. And so the next big pool of money that's going to be unlocked, and obviously a decent amount is already being unlocked for programmatic, is going to be brand kind of spend. And so a lot of like programmatic, what it is today, and I think someone had mentioned like Criteo, is like basically this person came to my site, let's just say like Amazon. So Amazon says, okay, these 500,000 people have come to my site, and they put something in the shopping cart. I'm going to retarget them, and so when they click the ad, they'll end up back on Amazon, and maybe I'll give them £5 off, so they'll be able to consummate the transaction, right? So that's kind of very clearly, you guys all know this, performance advertising. But for brand advertising, it's like I want to reach like these number of people. I want to know like it actually had an impact upon them. I want to be able to reach them also in a very engaging kind of sight, sound, motion, sort of kind of creative, right? So the key aspects there, which are challenging in the industry, is A, unfortunately, there's a shitload of fraud, right? And there's a lot of activity that sometimes publishers don't even know what's happening, where there's various like kind of toolbars and like malware, and it's happened to Google, it's happened to YouTube, particularly where we had a ton of users. We didn't realize this. That I was talking to a friend of mine. He went to like his mom's house, and he was using his mom's computer, and she was saying, "Yeah, you Google, you have all these like image ads on Google.com." He's like, "What are you talking about? Like we don't have brand ads or image ads on Google.com." And he went to a laptop and fired up Google. I forget which country it was, but let's say just got .com, and there was a big photograph on just the homepage of Google, and that was overlaid by this kind of malware that was running in a browser, and that's unfortunately like rampant in the industry. So then you have a lot of this inventory that's being put onto the market, and when as a brand buyer, what your metric is like how many people actually saw my ad and how many. So basically, it's how many impressions are out there, right? And so if there's a lot of fake traffic out there, and a lot of kind of like almost like traffic being stolen from publishers, that creates a lot of uncertainty from a brand marketer perspective, because for Amazon, if they spend £1 million and they're trying to reach these 500,000 users to see how, they can tell like within a month that how many people actually consummate the transaction. But for brand advertiser, you don't really know, because your goal was just to reach people. And so viewability metrics is something that Google and others are spending a tremendous amount of time on, right? Also just ensuring that we prevent fraud. For instance, like Google recently bought a company, I forget how much, I don't know if it's public numbers, but he bought this company, Spider.io, for a tremendous amount of money, just to try to like clean up this industry. And then the third aspect of enabling brand spend is being able to have like online, I guess like measurement metrics, where you know that, okay, if this many people saw it, what impact did it have, right? So one product we released recently was, we saw that if a brand advertiser, again making this up, if Ford Motor Company, for instance, ran a bunch of brand ads across the internet, you'll actually see more people searching for a Ford using Google.com. So we have like the search uplift kind of product, and it's very real. The other is, after you've run this ad to, let's say, 1 million users, right? Again, a brand ad, then serving a subset of those users, are you now aware of my brand? Do you remember seeing this ad? And so these type of metrics is going to help us really shift from where very little of brand spend happens in a programmatic way to a tremendous amount. Yeah. And so, I don't think you guys touched on this as much, but another thing what programmatic enables is it makes operations much more streamlined in terms of typical reservation by. You have your ad operations folks with trafficking, sending like tags over. Back in the day, there's jokes where like tags were kind of like faxed over. Like, but even like when you email it, you're hitting that Control-C over like something that's this long. You're bound to leave out like the slash at the end, and then you Control-V on the other end, and like all this testing. There's an insane amount of inefficiency, and so programmatic like really helps like drive out or drive in a lot of efficiencies. And so we have numerous examples of where people are getting better results with less time, and then being able to allocate that time that they saved to things like being able to use, like maybe create a private marketplace and have the sales team be able to go out and get some of these brand dollars. And the last slide I have for you is just in similar case study to what you saw earlier, that you can read it for yourself, but Iberostar, top chain in Spain, they want to reach a segment of users. So they were able to identify 7 different audience segments, right? And then on a real-time basis, they would see, okay, like is one of these these cookies or these impressions that they're receiving, the request, so we receive a bid request from the various ad exchanges, and so that ad exchange would pass data in terms of, this is approximately where the user is located, and here's like the cookie, and the advertiser in this case would say, okay, like, does that cookie fall into one of the 7 audience segments that I'm interested in? And if so, then I'm going to show a creative very specific to that permutation. If I'm reading this right, then there's like, there's like 687 different, permutations, and kind of based on providing like kind of personalized advertising. And again, like, my dream is that brand advertising or programmatic advertising is as good as search advertising. Providing better experiences, it also led to better results. So that's kind of where, in terms of things, there's a lot. It's a super exciting industry. Like, I'm just like so happy to kind of be working in this industry. There's a lot that's happened. There's just a lot more to come.